What if Season 1 wasn't really Daisy's story? What if everything we've seen so far has actually been the origin story of Gilead's next great enemy? Because after the explosive ending of the Teastament Season 1, I have a theory that could completely change how we look at Agnes moving forward. And if this theory is correct, Agnes may become even more dangerous than June Osborne ever was. Not because she's stronger, not because she's smarter, but because, unlike June, Agnes was raised inside Gilead itself. And that makes her the perfect weapon against the regime. Let's break it all down. Season 1 ended with nearly everything Agnes believed in being shattered before her eyes. The system she trusted failed her. The adults who promised to protect her failed her. The commanders she was taught to respect proved themselves to be predators. And perhaps most importantly, the people she loved were ripped away from her. For most of the season, Agnes was still trying to convince herself that Gilead could work if only the wrong people were removed. But by the finale, that illusion was gone. She had witnessed abuse. She had witnessed corruption. She had witnessed innocent girls sacrificed to maintain power. And now she knows the problem isn't one evil man. The problem is the entire system. That's a dangerous realization. Because history has shown us something very important. The most dangerous revolutionaries are not the outsiders. They're the true believers who lose faith. And Agnes is rapidly becoming exactly that. Think about June in The Handmaid's Tale. June always remembered another life. She remembered freedom. She remembered choice. She remembered what normal looked like. Agnes doesn't have those memories. Gilead is all she's ever known. Which means every conclusion she reaches about the regime is coming from her own experiences. Nobody had to convince her. Nobody had to radicalize her. Gilead did that itself. And that's why I think Season 2 will transform Agnes from victim to revolutionary. But here's where the theory gets really interesting. I don't think Agnes becomes a hero immediately. I think she becomes dangerous first. There's a difference. Many fans assume Agnes will simply join Mayday and become another freedom fighter. But what if the writers take a darker path? What if Agnes spends much of Season 2 consumed by anger? After all, look at everything she's lost. Her trust, her innocence, her future, her friendships, her belief system, and, depending on Becca's fate, perhaps the person she cared about most. That's enough trauma to break anyone. Or turn them into something else. Imagine an Agnes who stops following rules entirely. An Agnes who begins manipulating people. An Agnes who learns how power actually works inside Gilead. Because one lesson Aunt Lydia has demonstrated throughout the series is that power isn't always held by the people sitting on top. Sometimes power belongs to the people who understand everyone else's secrets. And Agnes is starting to collect secrets. Lots of them. She knows what happened with Dr. Grove. She knows the truth about several commanders. She understands the hypocrisy at the heart of Gilead. And knowledge in this world is currency. That's exactly how Aunt Lydia built her influence. Which brings us to what may become the most important relationship in Season 2. Agnes and Aunt Lydia. Throughout Season 1, Lydia has been watching. Always watching. Testing. Evaluating. Calculating. She sees something in Agnes that others don't. Potential. Not simply as a wife. Not simply as a future aunt. But as someone capable of understanding how Gilead truly operates. And I believe Season 2 could place Agnes directly under Lydia's mentorship. That would change everything. Because if Agnes gains access to the same information networks Lydia controls, she instantly becomes one of the most powerful young women in Gilead. Not publicly. Secretly. And secret power is often far more dangerous. Now, let's talk about Becca. Because I think Becca's story may become the emotional heart of Season 2. If Becca survives the consequences of Season 1, Agnes will never forget what happened to her. In fact, I think Becca's fate becomes the catalyst for Agnes's transformation. Whether it's guilt, grief, anger, or all three, Agnes may start viewing every injustice through the lens of what happened to Becca. And that's where revenge enters the picture. What if Agnes stops trying to survive Gilead and starts trying to destroy it? Not openly, not recklessly, strategically, patiently, like Aunt Lydia. Imagine Agnes spending an entire season quietly earning trust, building alliances, learning secrets, positioning herself, while everyone around her assumes she's obedient. That would be terrifying, because nobody would see her coming. Not the commanders, not the aunts, not even Mayday. She could become a double agent operating entirely inside the system. And here's another theory. I don't think Daisy and Agnes stay separated for long. In fact, I think Season 2 forces them together more than ever. Season 1 showed us two girls raised in completely different worlds. One raised in freedom. One raised in oppression. One understands the outside world. One understands Gilead. Separately, they're valuable. Together, they're unstoppable. Daisy knows how to fight the regime from the outside. Agnes knows how to fight it from within. That's an incredibly powerful combination. And if they begin sharing information, they could become the greatest threat Gilead has ever faced. But there's another possibility. What if Agnes doesn't trust Daisy immediately? Think about it. Agnes has spent her entire life being lied to. Every authority figure in her world has betrayed her. Why would she suddenly trust another person claiming to have answers? Season 2 could create tension between them before eventually bringing them together. That conflict would make their alliance even stronger later. Now, let's discuss Garth. Because Garth may face the hardest choices of anyone in Season 2. Season 1 revealed that his family has deep connections to Gilead's leadership. His father is respected. His family benefits from the regime. His identity is tied to the system. Yet he's also connected to resistance efforts. Eventually, those loyalties will collide. And when they do, Agnes may be forced to choose whether she can still trust him. I actually think Garth's story ends in tragedy. Not because he's evil, because he's trapped. He's caught between two worlds. And characters caught between two worlds rarely survive stories like this. If Garth falls, Agnes could become even more radicalized. Another piece of evidence supporting this theory is the recurring theme of inheritance. Throughout Season 1, the show repeatedly hinted that Agnes is more like June than she realizes. Every time Agnes challenges authority, every time she questions rules, every time she refuses to accept injustice, we're seeing echoes of her mother. And Season May 2nd finally bring those similarities to the forefront. Imagine Agnes discovering the full truth about June. Not the propaganda version. The real version. The woman who became a symbol of resistance. The woman who refused to surrender. The woman who fought an entire nation. What would that do to Agnes? I think it would fundamentally change her. Because suddenly rebellion wouldn't feel impossible anymore. It would feel personal. It would feel inherited. It would feel like destiny. And that's exactly what Gilead fears. Not just rebellion. Legacy. Because ideas survive longer than governments. June's ideas survived. Mayday survived. Hope survived. And now those ideas are reaching Agnes. Which brings us to my biggest Season 2 prediction. I think Agnes becomes Gilead's greatest threat because nobody recognizes her as a threat. At least not initially. Daisy already has suspicion surrounding her. The resistance already watches Daisy. The eyes already monitor outsiders. But Agnes? Agnes is exactly who Gilead thinks it created. A well-trained daughter of the system. A believer. A future wife. Maybe even a future aunt. That's the perfect cover. And powerful regimes often collapse because they fail to recognize danger inside their own walls. The cracks always begin internally, never externally. That's why I believe Agnes will eventually become more dangerous than June. June attacked Gilead from outside its inner circle. Agnes can attack from within. She knows the traditions. She knows the language. She knows the rituals. She knows the psychology. She understands how Gilead thinks. And once she stops believing in it, that knowledge becomes a weapon. A very powerful weapon. So when Season 2 arrives, don't expect Agnes to suddenly become an action hero. Don't expect dramatic speeches. Don't expect immediate rebellion. Expect something much more frightening. A young woman who has lost faith. A young woman who has learned how power works. A young woman who begins collecting secrets. Because the moment Agnes realizes she no longer needs Gilead's approval, everything changes. And if this theory is correct, Season 2 won't simply be about the fall of Gilead. It will be about the rise of Agnes, the girl Gilead raised, the girl Gilead tried to control, and ultimately, the girl who may destroy it from the inside.